All of us need to demand a Congress brave enough to stand up to the gun lobby's lies. All of us need to stand up and protect its citizens. All of us need to demand governors and legislators and businesses do their part to make our communities safer. We need the wide majority of responsible gun owners who grieve with us every time this happens and feel like your views are not being properly represented to join with us to demand something better.
And obviously emotional President Obama calling out not just the gun lobby, but also the public to try and do something, anything, to break this cycle here where there's tragedy, there's gun violence, senseless. We then look into it and say, oh, we can do better, and then rinse and repeat, and the same thing happens. So he made some gestures today, if you will. Very few people on either sides think they are quote-unquote game changers, but nonetheless, it does open this up to a conversation about where we are and where we could go as a country on this issue. Let's bring in our panel right now. Talk about the political implications, among other things, regarding the president's move. Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College, as well as a professor of campaign management at NYU. Journal News columnist Phil Reisman wrote a really moving piece, by the way, about Sergeant Lem that we'll be talking about later. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and you met Andrew Whitman before. And Jeannie, an obviously emotional president. And I think a lot of people, we've talked about this before, that have, every American, but especially if you had kids in that window when Sandy Hook happened, and just how much of an indelible mark, and even in this 24-hour news culture we live in, where you move on, that still stayed with people. And unfortunately, we've had so many other mass shootings since then as reminders, but I believe this president will look back as this will be his greatest frustration, that in 7 years, or maybe at the come November, 8 years, he really hasn't been able to really move the needle on this issue, maybe with regrets about opportunities that were missed or might have been handled differently in retrospect. But I think this is his one great frustration.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that. And you know, I give credit to the president for saying that in his last year, he is going to push on this, and he is not going to rest, and he is going to try to take executive action, which arguably may not even begin to solve the problem or address the problem, but he's going to push it. But I think one thing he can take solace in is that him coming out and talking about it, even if he doesn't get the policy end of things straightened out before he leaves, does have an impact. And I think, you know, if you look at something like healthcare, it took a lot of presidents before President Obama to say, we need to talk about changing our healthcare system, and that matters. So the rhetoric does matter, and I think he can take solace in that. I don't think we're going to see real policy change on this beyond the executive orders. And even there, we'll probably see those fought, and they may not survive. And certainly if there's a Republican elected, they may be overturned. The other thing I think he can take solace in is that for people who really care about this issue, it may be something that they vote on. And if the Republicans continue to say that they will strike these down the minute they get into office, it may be enough to push a certain segment
maybe
of the
in the
population.
national general, as we've seen state by state here, just ask some of the Colorado electeds who passed gun reform after the mass shootings there, both Columbine and then after the one in Aurora. They lost their jobs in the subsequent elections. But Dominic, let's look at it through a political prism, which is this won't move the needle significantly either way. Was this move as much for the next calendar year of elections, or was it also to say, okay, I'm putting down my marker? You Republicans vote against something that, I'm not talking about assault weapons, I'm not talking about anything debatable. I'm talking about somebody with criminal records, somebody with mental documented records, some people on terror watch lists, that they shouldn't be able to go get a gun basically at a gun show here where there's no documentation. I'll even pay for a couple hundred more ATF agents to make sure that you guys have culpability, that you're selling it not to the bad people. This is a hard thing, I think, even for the NRA to say, we don't agree with this. I mean, they did today, but that's tough to sell to the public, no?
Well, unfortunately, Richard, anything beyond these executive orders this year is dead on arrival, completely.
Still today, you're right. I'm not debating that at all. But I'm
Okay.
saying today that every candidate for president was asked this question after the president did. Hillary gave a full-throated support for it. Rubio says it's overreach by the president. Who knows where this goes? Wait till Trump gets a hold of this one. I haven't heard what he had to say today, but you can imagine, okay? He said yesterday they're coming to take everyone's guns away. So my point is, it at least make you have to go on record if you want to be president, if you think even this is too much, right?
Oh, when you say go on record, sure they're going to go on record. They're going to say this president sees himself as a dictator, as king, and that he's gone too far. It's not enough to simply go on the record, Richard, because they're going to go on the record to the opposite extreme. What he did today was the president of the United States breaking down in tears. And the second part is what caught me. When he pointed out that talking about what happened in Connecticut, but also pointing out that this happens in Chicago each and every day. Each and every day.
Yep.
But the extremes are so far apart, Richard. It's just, Obama says yes, they say no. It's as simple as that.
You don't feel, I don't know how this could ever be litigated in the press or in the public consumption, but when he said, if 30,000 people a year died of figure disease or some pandemic or imagine bird flu claimed all these people, we would move heaven and earth and this country would figure out a way to do something about it. I know this is more complicated. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but the day that we can look at it that way, I don't care your politics, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, and say 30,000 people a year are dying at the end of a gun. Right. We can do something better than that. Whoever can form that platform that people talk about it will finally move this thing, I think.
This is an issue that baffles me, and as you just said, 30,000 a year. This president has been buffeted for all 8 years on this issue, including the fact that we've had Sandy Hook and San Bernardino and everything in between. If there's like a post-traumatic stress for a president, right. I think this has to be it, in terms of just the carnage, and of course the Chicago thing too. But what gets me though is that the polls pretty much say that people are in favor of expanded background checks and things like that. But there's this opposition out there that I think Trump is probably in the lead of, or at least those people that are not in favor of any kind of gun control or any kind of gun control measures that make sense. It blows my mind that there are so many people. The 89% of Quinnipiac poll said they were in favor of.
Well, that's perfect for me, Andrew. The one thing,
but it obviously doesn't translate into votes, I guess.
Well, except this:
right.
The way our system works is they only have to vote on something if they want to. Mm-hmm. Okay. If I was the president, and maybe because you and I watch too much West Wing, right, and we saw every episode, you march up and you say, every day, right, I want to vote. Right. Here's a clean thing, background check for everybody who gets a gun. Sure. Just vote for it. Sure. Vote yes or no, but vote for it. And if 89%, 75% of the NRA's own members support that, right? And unfortunately, within the month, there'll be another mass shooting, right? That there'll be another thing to draw on, so you don't have to draw on memories from 4 years ago or something. That just vote on it. Just at least have the courage to say yes or no.
But we're like 2 weeks away from exactly 7 years of the Obama presidency. How many times has Congress had to vote on that clean bill on background checks, or that clean bill on extended ammo clips, or that clean bill on whatever the case may be?
Not enough.
Once.
Right.
Once in the immediate aftermath of Newtown. I submit that this president has done, you'd think he's going to regret, and that this will be the ghost that shadows him when he's out of office. I think his regret is going to be, I haven't done enough.
I agree.
I don't think he has. And I held my tongue for political reasons.
Yep.
Because I'm the guy that everybody likes to hate, especially on the right. So if I injected myself too much into this debate, it was a sure loser. Meanwhile, he gave up the bully pulpit that we only really saw him take today. And we've seen him in other aftermaths of other tragedies. But where was the Obama that we saw today all 7 years of this presidency?
And you know what, Dominic?
Why hasn't he started and led this campaign?
I can't agree with him more.
I can't disagree more. What do we want him to do? Walk on water?
No.
We want Obama to walk on water?
I saw, a lot of people saw a parent there today, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If he showed up in Chicago, okay? Mm-hmm. God knows you can pick any random day of the week and any have to schedule it and go to a funeral here and show that same level of upsetness. If he went into Sandy Hook, and like he said, we all know what happened after Sandy Hook. Gave one speech there, said to Congress, "You guys push the ball because I'm the boogeyman here. I come there, I'm gonna hurt this thing." As soon as it failed, he then did a press conference where then he did the best speech I think he's done here, one of the best as he was president, talking about how wrong it was. The whole time in between, he didn't say boo. Okay, he's the president. They're never gonna like him on the other side, no matter what he does. But a lot of people are looking for somebody to fill the void. He didn't fill the void on this one. Maybe he thought he got his, that they all, broke arms there to get the health care pass, so he was going to let him get a pass on this one. But to me, I think down deep, and I'm playing psychobabble, he knew he could have done more than he did. And maybe he could have said, take the assault weapons off of it, take the other stuff off of it, take the ammo clips off of it, just do a background check. I think he could have done something.
I mean,
I think guns are the last ditch for this group out there that feels that everything has been taken from them by the government. And this is the one area, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no,
but
please.
the Second Amendment is the thing they're standing on. They're going to say anything you want to do.
Right.
It has nothing to do with public safety. It has everything to do with just taking my rights away. It has everything to do with government imposing itself on my life.
I mean, you look
and
at.
this is their last
We
ditch
were
issue.
talking back. So you look at what's going on in Oregon today. It's this.
Thank you. That's exactly the point I was about to make. Oregon.
But are you going to let them drive the national narrative, Jeannie?
No, not drive the
20
national
wackos
narrative.
with
But
guns on public land?
But I do have to say, I mean, I appreciate Andrew's point about the fact any president could do more. But the reality is, you have to pick and choose your battles. He was not going to get gun control through. Regardless of how much momentum he had in the weeks after Sandy Hook.
You believe Sandy Hook? You believe
Congress,
post Sandy Hook it never would have gotten through?
Never. A Republican Congress looking at 2014 and
never
looking
would have
forward to
gotten through.
2016 was not going to get through. So he could have, fallen on his sword on this issue, but he has other things to deal with. He had the trade deal to deal with. He has the environmental issues to deal with. He has.
Larry's telling me to shut up. But here's my only point. No, not you. He's telling me to shut up. But my only thing was, think about this window of time, and this is totally Monday morning quarterbacking or Tuesday night quarterbacking, whatever. After Wayne LaPierre gave the most tone-deaf speech, we had even Republicans going, I'm not with this guy, when the NRA said what they did after the shootings, right? And the poll comes out that 91% of Americans support background checks. If they brought a clean bill with just background checks to the floor of Congress the next week.
No, sorry,
Doesn't
Larry.
work that
It
way.
doesn't work that way. We have to be careful of these polls. People say a lot
polls
of
don't
things in
matter.
polls, and they do not follow that, as Phil and Dominic mentioned, with voting. And so if they're not going to follow it with voting, it's an empty gesture. And
Completely empty.
it's got to be something that people are
You know
willing
they
to go
said
out
the
on
same
that.
stuff before. They said it about health care. They've said it about civil rights before that.
that's what-
There's been times where they
but
said it's too much
in,
of a...
in 10 or 20 years, we may be there with gun control. We're not there now.
Richard,
But
Yeah, go to
only
break.
with those empty gestures that lead us to that tipping
Obama
point.
is the
Well,
head of
that's
the
what's my
Democratic
point.
Party.
It pushes
He's
it.
got to have coattails. If he goes out full throttle on gun control and the Democrats lose in every race where it's... He has to look at everything.
He tried that. How many Democrats did it really cost them jobs in the midterms after Sandy Hook? Nobody.
And how?
Didn't cost anybody
but
jobs.
hey, if we're going to blame Democrats in Congress who have been silent on this
Fair
issue
enough.
largely.
But he is the... Okay, well, we can
Sorry,
go in
Larry.
circles on this one. Okay, coming up next here, we're going to come closer to home here. The back and forth, it continues between de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo, this time over homelessness. And the governor lashing back at Bill de Blasio. We'll tell you the latest in the exchange here as they're trying to figure out how to help homeless people as the temperatures get colder and colder.